I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of Australia and their connections to land, sea, sky, and community. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today. Hello, my love, and welcome to the April and Fritz podcast. My name is Brie, and I am the head designer and owner of April and Fritz, a bespoke floral design studio here in Melbourne, Australia. And can I just start by saying that I am so grateful that you are here. The podcast has just been, so well received, and I'm just incredibly grateful to each and every single one of you that's listening. As the only way the podcast grows is by you following and subscribing. And I just wanted to say that, I can see you subscribing, I can see you liking, and I'm just so, so grateful, for you. And if you haven't already done so, please do so. I'd love to be able to reach more people just like you. And again, the only way that this actually grows is if you do that. So we don't run ads, we don't do anything like that. So the idea is that it grows organically based on the content that we share. So you might have noticed that again, I'm recording this episode without the video because the truth is I am a florist and not necessarily a professional podcaster. So I'm still trying to figure out, I guess, what works best for you and for me. And I'm currently sitting in my lounge room at home, so I apologize for any background noise. I've got my trackies on, I'm makeup free. I've got this little incense burning just to paint a picture for you. But I want to hear your feedback. Are you liking the new video? Do you prefer audio only, or do you want to see a face? Feel free to let me know by sliding over into my DMs at April and Fritz on Instagram. So let's get into today's episode. I want to start off by telling a story. I was recently working a wedding and I was waiting for the signing of the marriage certificate to be completed by the couple. I was just kind of standing there and really waiting on the opposite side of the bar where there were a bunch of guests who were kind of having drinks and waiting for photos and just, things to start really. And I was just kind of standing there, not really doing anything in particular, just kind of waiting. I was actually really, to be honest with you, kind of watching to see if the groom had gotten his second buttonhole because he had hugged someone right as the ceremony was starting and it got caught on somebody's jacket and basically just pulled it apart a little bit. So after the ceremony was over, I had a spare one for him. And so anyway, I had handed it to him and was wanting to see if he had actually gotten it and putting it on okay. Anyway, one of the guests, a woman, she started talking to me. She introduced herself as one of the MCs for the night. She was related to one of the couple, and she was just, honestly, she was so fabulous. We kind of got chatting, and I had kind of explained that I was, the florist for the wedding, and I was really waiting because after the photos were all done, I was going to be moving the ceremony to the reception space. And I had just kind of been watching to see if the groom had put on his second buttonhole okay. She loved the flowers. She was very complimentary and had kind of asked me, what area are you from? And I explained that I traveled from Melbourne, obviously gone up early to do the bouquets and the buttonholes and all of that kind of thing that morning and driven and, come to the setup and done all the ceremony and all of that kind of thing. And she said to me, she's like, so you have been up since 3 a.m., made everything, driven over an hour, set up the ceremony, watched the ceremony, standing here kind of making sure everything was okay, and will then move the ceremony into the reception and then head home. And I was like, you've pretty much nailed it. That's the plan. And she turned to me and she was just like, I have never met a florist like you. And in that moment, to be honest with you, I was kind of really surprised. I actually took a bit of a moment and I didn't really know what to say, to be honest. She kind of continued and she was like, the couple who I won't mention, she's like, they are so lucky to have found you. And she asked for my business card. And of course, everyone is going to be super happy with that. So anyway, she had to get on with her job. I had to get on with mine, but she was fabulous. She was, like I said, just a family member and had kind of started that whole chat. So that night I was with a friend of mine and over dinner, she kind of asked me about how my day was and, what kind of happened and, all these kind of things. And I told her about this experience that I'd had with the guest. And then she was kind of telling me a little bit more about her experience from her own wedding. And at the time, I was living overseas. I was in a totally different career and all of these kind of things. But, she was explaining to me that basically she had a phone conversation with her florist. She sent some pictures over email, paid the invoice, and then on the day, the florist dropped them off, and that was just kind of that. And I just thought that that was interesting because I guess when I thought about the experience that I had just given my couple versus the experience that she had had, there was obviously a lot of merit to what, her florist had done because obviously it was working for her. She obviously did a great job and everything like that. Um, but I couldn't help but compare myself, and a couple of days later, I received the most beautiful reply from the couple off the back of, I send every couple a survey when we're done, just kind of asking them for their feedback and this kind of thing. And so I just kind of want to read it out aloud to you. So it said, our experience with Bree and the whole team at April and Fritz was professional, supportive, inspiring, and ultimately delivered on and exceeded our expectations. Bree is a true creative with a skill for really listening, inspiring, and supporting a vision. The little touches from start to finish made our hearts sing. We had really chosen the right floral designer to be on our team, and the end result just further cemented this. We can't thank the team enough for everything. You really made our day something special. So I've really been reflecting on this because, you know, me being me, I always want to dissect when I feel as though something is going right. And I just felt as though her comment around, like, I've never met a florist like you. I haven't heard that compliment before, maybe in different ways, but not those exact words. And as you kind of heard from the testimonial, like, there's definitely some merit there. And so I've been kind of thinking on this comment and what might have actually prompted her to say that, and what it was about that she saw or heard that really kind of prompted her to say it in the first place. And this is where I've landed. I don't know if this is actually correct or not, to be honest with you, but this is where I've kind of landed. The one thing that I hear time and time again is that, one thing in the wedding industry is the cost of flowers. It's expensive, this and that. One thing I really want to encourage you to do is ask about the service and think about the service that you are receiving beyond the flowers themselves. I have mentioned kind of on previous episodes about my process and the service that I offer clients, but I kind of want to walk you through the journey that I went through with this particular couple. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to walk you through what it looks like as a client with me and in my business. Because the truth is, and again, I think I've said this on previous episodes, I know that we're not the cheapest and we're not trying to be the cheapest, but what we offer and the amount of value that we give our clients in the service that we offer beyond the flowers, this is the kind of thing that you can expect. Again, I want to caveat though that this is my business's kind of service model at this point in time. Obviously, there is every chance it's going to evolve and change, and honestly, I do kind of cater my service based on the couple or client themselves. So I wouldn't always say that there's like a one size fits all process, but nonetheless, I think it's still important for you to see that so you can kind of understand the value that, a florist may be bringing to you. So I met this couple through a recommendation from a photographer. I had met this photographer at another event quite a long time ago, and we'd done some work together. I love them. They're so fantastic at what they do. And I often kind of consider our clients to be quite alike. I would say they're quite down to earth, they're quite fun loving, they're really kind. And so, of course, when I hear that they had recommended me and that this person had reached, this couple had reached out, like, I was obviously just going to be like so excited. And so they sent through their inquiry. I responded with my availability within 24 hours and suggested jumping on a call with a link to my calendar with obviously plenty of times and dates available to chat. And ahead of that meeting, I'd actually sent them a form to kind of capture the details of their day. Maybe, a little bit more about their vision and a little bit more about them too. And so when we actually jumped on the call, we spent some time really trying to get to know one another. I know that there are plenty of service providers out there who are all about the finished product and all about the design, but the way that I love to run my business is that I want to work with people that I actually want to hang out with, because the reality is that
we're going to spend so much time together over the coming months, if it is something like a wedding or, a corporate event, whatever it may be, that, we both actually have to like spending time with one another. We have to like each other's vibe. We have to like each other's approach. And so you kind of can't really have that unless you do jump on a call. And so during that kind of first section of the call, I always really like to just like get to know them, really. And it really comes down to, not to get too like woo woo about it or anything like that, but it's like an energetic match along with like a creative one, you know? And so after the call, I sent them along a bit of a design concept with the contract and the deposit invoice within 24 hours. And honestly, they didn't even want to change anything. Not a single thing. They were just like, yep, that all sounds amazing. We're done. We're in. So they signed the contract, paid the deposit, and it was all good. So I think the fact that like they didn't want any changes was really quite a testament to like the conversation that we had had. The communication level was obviously there. The clientele was like really open, and the people that I do generally work with are like that. So it doesn't mean to say that every time I send a design concept it's going to be absolutely perfect. Of course, I can try as I may to like be inside your brain, but the reality is that, I'm not. So like even if there was a bit of back and forth, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, but ultimately like these people trusted me, and I think that that's what it really came down to. So within 24 hours, I actually sent them off a welcome gift, which at this point in time, what we're sending is a Kenshi candle, which if you haven't heard of that brand, I highly, highly recommend checking them out. They are a social enterprise where a minimum of 50% of their profits go towards funding pasta for people experiencing food insecurity here in Australia and around the world. But they're also made right here in Melbourne. So they're actually giving, our local community jobs and all of that kind of, really good stuff. So I like to do that with my couples and with my clients because it kind of marks the beginning of a journey together. And I feel like that's worth celebrating. I really kind of say to them in that moment, like, you're part of the April and Fritz family. Like you can call me, you can message me, you can do whatever it is that you need to do. And my door's always open for you. And so generally what happens, especially with the wedding, like a little bit of time goes by and typically you don't kind of meet or chat that much in that time because, often couples are kind of doing their other thing, like, they're organizing other logistics or details or whatever it may be. But what I've found with my clients is that during that time, even if we're not communicating directly about their event, you know, they'll have us on Instagram, we'll add them on theirs, we'll be seeing what they're up to, commenting, chatting, this and that, liking all their stuff. And so it's almost like even if it's not actively chit-chatting with one another, it's like a passive relationship that's getting built in that time. And I just feel like that's so beautiful because it just gives us an insight into what they like, what they love, what they're up to, and what's kind of been happening for them. Because the reality is, like I said, while they're organizing all of those other details, maybe we're not like chatting that much. So seeing what they've been up to and all the rest of it, I just feel like we're part of that journey with them, even if we're not directly involved. And so then when it was time to actually sit down and have a chat and, do that kind of final review of everything, I drove over an hour to the venue and met them there for dinner, where we had to sit down with the venue manager to talk through the logistics and the details of the day. We had a meal and spoke about, them, their day, their lives, and honestly just really kind of connected. I love, this is probably my favorite moment with clients and couples because they're not kind of in a hurry, and like they're focused, and it really is just about being in the moment and like getting to know you and hearing your ideas. And it's like a brainstorming session a lot of the time, like they're asking your opinion, you're kind of asking them questions, and you really do kind of get a lot more of a grasp of the day itself and what they're like as a couple. And yeah, I just feel like there's just something so beautiful about that. It doesn't matter how many times I do that final kind of meeting. I always try and meet my clients as much as I can face to face, whether it be for lunch or dinner or whatever it may be, because that feels like the real connection point, Like the reality is on the day, they're going to be so chaotically busy with like all of their people doing all of their things. And so I don't want to be just another face in the room. I want them to be able to see me, know that I'm like there with their flowers, I'm there to support them, and that they can look at me at any point in time and like I'm there, you know? So it's not just a drop off, which I'll get to shortly, but at the moment, we go through all the details, we check out the venue, we look at logistics, all of that kind of thing. And obviously I shout them dinner and all of that, and it's fabulous. After that meeting, I went away and finalized the details. So I sent them an updated design concept. Now that we kind of had a few more details confirmed, we were in the space, we were able to talk things through and brainstorm. That kind of obviously informs the final design. And that also did have an impact on their final invoice. And so once that was all paid out, then like they were all set for their big day. And I like to do that nice and early, a minimum 4 weeks out from your actual event. Reason being, I don't want to be the cause of any kind of last minute bills, stress, anything like that, like need approvals, whatever, the week of their wedding. That's not it. So I like to get in nice and early. I like to make sure everything's confirmed. Obviously, if things do change, there's room for that too. But for the most part, it's kind of locked in from there, because then what I like to do is go away and actually talk to growers, talk to wholesalers, and get that flower order in so that, we have the best chance of getting exactly what they want, providing that it's in season, in the colors, and all of those kind of things. And so it's a strategic move for the benefit of those clients and that couple. And so then when we fast forward to the week of their wedding, when I was creating their design, in the days leading up to the big day, I was looking at different flowers to include and obviously that sort of thing. And I'd actually decided to buy a couple of plants with a particular variety that we were going to be using in the bouquets themselves. And what I wanted to do was actually incorporate those plants into the ceremony design. And the reason why I did that was because I really wanted to be able to gift those plants to them as a wedding gift from us. The idea being that, they can take those plants from their wedding day, plant them in the garden, tend to them, and watch them grow over the years, which, just like the flowers will bloom, so will their marriage. And I just feel like that is such a beautiful way to like round out their day. And so on the day, I was obviously there to drop everything off in the morning. And what I like to do is always show the bride and the bridesmaids how to hold their bouquets for photos, how to attach the buttonholes for the groom and the groomsmen or whoever it may be, then head straight to the venue for the setup of the ceremony. And it was there that I worked with their baker to actually attach the flowers to their cake. I worked with the venue manager to place kind of like, the welcome sign, and really set up a few spots where the flowers were going to be featured essentially. Now, for this particular couple, they actually were going to be going to the venue early because they wanted to do a first look, they wanted to do photos and like all of that kind of thing. And so, of course, I checked all of the bouquets, I checked all of the buttonholes, even replacing one of the buttonholes for the groomsmen right before the ceremony. Reason being, he had kind of accidentally smacked it when he was taking off his jacket. And so I waited, obviously during the ceremony, as I was going to be moving the ceremony to another space afterwards. So during the ceremony, I think I mentioned earlier that the groom hugged someone and his buttonhole just kind of looked a little bit ratty. And so obviously it, had been caught, and I was right back with another one for him. So sometimes there's nothing you can do when it actually comes to the ceremony. Like the bride was walking down the aisle. I wasn't about to stop the whole ceremony or anything like that. But the second that they had walked through and were getting ready for the signing of their marriage certificate, I was there with their other buttonhole. It was getting changed over so that they were going to look fabulous for their photos. And that was really, really important. Now, when it came to moving the ceremony, so they were actually going to be taking family photos in front of the ceremony space first before moving it. And so I hung with the photographer for family photos. And obviously he's the photographer, so he was doing the photos and that kind of thing. And so I was kind of like helping him out, just like fluffing her train or like helping direct family members and like, making sure like the boys had like all of their buttons undone or done up, depending on what they were kind of doing. And so, just being able to be there and like help do all the things, those little things that make the difference. And look, you could argue, like, is that my job? Probably not. But I think at the end of the day, like, if I'm there and I'm capable, willing, and able, like, of course, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it perfect for them. So once that was over, I kind of moved the ceremony feature to some high impact spots around the reception. So on the bar, by the cake, like that kind of thing. And pretty much cleaned up the ceremony space so that it could actually be used as an outdoor area afterwards. I was then, off. I was going to let them enjoy their special day. Everything was set. They were all good. And then I actually came back that evening at around 11 to collect all of the flowers and wrap them up into little bouquets for guests to take home. Collected all of the vases, cleaned up all the spots where the flowers were, helped family and friends pack their gifts and welcome sign and that sort of thing into their car. And, obviously afterwards I had sent them that follow-up survey asking how their experience was. And further than that, we actually plant a tree with Carbon Positive Australia for each client that comes through us. And the reason being is that we want to be able to give back to nature in the same way that we're taking from it through their event. And look, it may not be a perfect science, but at the end of the day, it is something. And, that's what we try to do with our work is give back. So I just kind of want you to take a moment to have a think about all of that. And so now I've got to ask you, what service are you getting as a client? I spoke about everything that I was doing on the day, but hardly mentioned the bride or groom. And the reason why is because I don't want them to have to worry about what I'm doing. I'm doing what's required to make their day go as smoothly as possible. And it's my kind of service ethos, I suppose, that I want them to be able to relax, enjoy, and just kind of take it all in. And that doesn't mean that there weren't any hiccups. The groom's buttonhole kind of fell apart, like we said, with the ceremony, on and on. But the couple knew that I had them. I was right there with a spare buttonhole. I was there making sure it was connected okay. I was there making sure that as soon as the opportunity presented itself, he had that locked back on his jacket so that his photos looked great. And so I guess the question then does become, is this important to you? Do you value the service that is on offer? For some couples, this level of attention and commitment is what they feel is right for them. And I'm not saying that this approach is necessarily right for everyone, but my clients know what they know what I'm talking about. It's about being there. It's about problem solving before they even know there's a problem. It's about giving them something to go away with beyond just pretty flowers. And I think it's about doing what's required. And so when you're going through the process of meeting with floral designers, I really encourage you to ask them about the service. What is the service that is included that you receive after that first consultation? What about during your engagement with them? What about in the lead up to your event? On the day of it and after it? Like, yes, you are investing in flowers, but a lot of the time you're also investing in the experience that you're going to have with that business. And on one of the most important events, in your life, potentially like a wedding day or any of the other kind of events that we do, you want to know that the level of service that you receive is going to be minimum up to your expectations, but better yet, it's going to exceed them. And so I just really want you to sit with that and question, all of your vendors around the service that you're kind of getting, because I think it's one thing to receive a product at the end, but it's also about how you get there. And so, again, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I would so love it if you could go ahead and leave 5 stars for this podcast. It really is just super helpful to get this podcast out there. And, for all of those other kind of floral and event lovers who may not know about it yet, this is the opportunity to kind of put it in front of them. So I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.